What's going on, guys? This is Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ back in for another great episode. And today's episode is Stardom, Sid'em, Week 5. Crazy week. COVID injuries are still happening. A lot of things going on, but we are 5 weeks. We are a quarter into the season, 4 weeks down. This is Week 5. We've got a lot of stuff going on with COVID, injuries, etc. We don't know what's happening with the Titans game, but we shall find out. So I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get right into the episode. Now, I do want to start off saying sorry for the camera quality. It's a little fuzzy, a little blurry, but this is the laptop, camera, and my webcam ended up taking a shit. So got to order another one. But what can you do? The show must go on. So Stardom, Sid'em, Week 5. First up, Justin Jefferson against the Seahawks this week. This is going to be a big game for Justin Jefferson. Seahawks are ranked 31st in the league for pass defense. They are terrible, people. Justin Jefferson should feast. Now, I mentioned earlier on my Twitter, if you're on the bubble with Josh Allen not possibly playing because of this Titans game where they're going to forfeit the game or whatever the case may be, then, you might want to go grab Kirk Cousins. That's another little sneaky little waiver wire pickup right there for you in the Stardom Sid'em episode. But again, back to Justin Jefferson. 2 weeks, he had 100 yards plus. I think it's kind of like signaling that it's a full send for Justin Jefferson in the lineups with him facing the Seahawks this week that cannot stop the pass. This should be the week where he explodes into that top 5 wide receiver, ranking for the week. So I definitely want all parts of Justin Jefferson going into this week against the Seahawks. I mean, the dude is just killing it right now. He's getting the yardage, and he was very impressive getting 100-plus yards against Houston last week, where they were tough against the pass. They were actually ranked 5th or 6th. So therefore, for him to even come out with 100 yards, that's very impressive. So we already knew that game was game scripted to be Dalvin Cook, where he'll feast. And I think I called that out from a mile away. Houston are absolutely dead last in stopping the run. So that was just a Dalvin Cook, game script where he can run the ball, kill the clock, and let's get out of here with a dub. So anyway, back to Justin Jefferson. He has Atlanta next week as well. So you're going to have a little, Justin Jefferson party for the next 2 weeks because he's going against terrible defenses, people. So I do look for him to feast this week against the Seahawks. It's going to be a shootout. Now, next up, this is a little shaky start, but a lot of injuries with COVID going on. Derrick Henry out there, with the COVID IR, but he don't have it. I'm just saying the whole team does. Probably he does have it. I don't know. I'm not a fucking doctor. But anyway, David Johnson going against the Jags this week. Jags are ranked 6th worst against the run. So I definitely think David Johnson is going to be a nice little plug and play for you guys that are hurting in the flex position. And I know a lot of people have been getting a lot of mid from David Johnson. I mean, week 1 was probably the best version that we've seen of him, but I think this week will be, something different against the Jags. We've seen what Joe Mixon did last week, and we know David Johnson can be involved in the passing game. He's looking like the only, usable, viable tool out there besides Deshaun Watson, to help that offense move. So he's seeing 4 to 3 targets a game. He's catching 3 to 4 passes a game. You know what I mean? Maybe that number jumps up this week where he can get more involved. We've seen Joe Mixon when he did last week. 3 touchdowns. That was amazing. Thank you for showing life because I was just about to trade you. But anyway, David Johnson this week, I think it's a nice play. I think he puts up a lot of points, maybe 15 to 20. I'm not going to say he's going to go into Joe Mixon mode where he puts up 3 touchdowns, but I think he'll be very useful. He's going to be fantasy relevant this week against the Jags. Now, my next stardom for the week. Now, this might be a little shaky as well, but hear me out. Devonta Freeman against Dallas. Dallas is 31st against the run, and I feel like he didn't look that terrible last week against my Rams. He didn't do crazy numbers where he had a crazy snap percentage or he put up a lot of points. He only had 10 points, but he didn't look terrible for the opportunities that he had against, my Rams. And I feel like we are having somewhat trouble stopping the run, but Devonta Freeman actually managed to, put up 10 points, which is, okay, cool. You showed a little bit of life. You showed that you're not completely washed out and you could put up some points. But I think this week against the Cowboys, I think the Giants should lean on the run, even with that bad O-line. I think they should just keep the run going. Dallas cannot stop the run. I mean, for the simple fact that we've seen Ernest and we've seen Nick Chubb and, we've seen Hunt put up a lot of yardage, before Nick Chubb was going to, to injury or whatever. But we knew Nick Chubb was going to eat that game. But anyway, Hunt, Ernest putting up good points. Ernest. I mean, I keep saying Ernest. He sounds like an old man name. But it doesn't matter. Devonta Freeman is going to be the lead back there in New York, and I feel like they should lean on the run, even with that bad O-line. Keeping the ball out of Daniel Jones looks to be something that they need to move forward doing because he's not making the best decision-making out there. And against my Rams, he threw that pick in the fourth quarter, sealed the deal, game over. That's kind of something we need to work on, people. Looking like Eli. But anyway, with Devonta Freeman sitting in your bench, he could be a nice little plug and play. Again, if you're a Derrick Henry owner, if you're sitting here worried about Devin Singletary, etc., because of the game being canceled, or you're just dealing with injuries in general, Devonta Freeman could be a nice little plug and play this week. He has the better half of the matchup. He has the ceiling to actually put up 10 to 15 points. And that's all we want from our guys from the flex position. You're not looking for RB1 numbers from Devonta Freeman. So let's be very clear with that. Now, let's get to the sit-em, people. Now, this list should be kind of obvious, but not really. Some people are still rolling the dice on some of these guys. But first up, I want to start with Darrell Henderson. Now, he did shit the bed last week with only 4 points. I was one of those victims to be burned, but he was in my flex position, and I still came out with a dub, so I'm not that mad. So right now, what's happening in LA, I feel like Sean McVay is still holding auditions for the RB1. So if we look at basically the history that happened these last 4 weeks, we had Malcolm Brown go off against Dallas. And then game 2, Cam Akers got injured. He was trying to be more involved. He was very involved in the first game. He just wasn't as involved as Malcolm Brown. Now, week 2, he gets injured with the rib injury. Darrell Henderson comes in. He does great. Then Malcolm Brown breaks his pinky or fractures his pinky, wherever the case may be. Now, they didn't want to, have him out there, re-injure something else and put him out for a long period of time. So Hendo got most of the workload, saw most of the snap opportunity. Now we go into week 4. Malcolm Brown is over the little pinky injury, and then Malcolm Brown looks to be the lead back with a hot hand. So Henderson kind of just fell in the background. So those 2 weeks that we got the Hendo season was, a nice little taste of what he can do, what his ability is, especially catching balls out of backfield. But again, Malcolm Brown catching most of the balls out of the backfield last week and only Henderson having 1 target for 1 catch. Oh, man, it's getting messy. And then Cam Akers is coming back this week. It doesn't look too good. They're going against Washington. It doesn't look like we're going to have a set, RB1 week to week. It's going to be the constant headache. It's going to be the constant who's the hot hand. San Fran, Patriots backfield, etc. Just add the Rams to that list. And I kind of don't want any parts of any Rams running backs moving forward after seeing, how this is panning out. So it all depends on how the rest of the season goes. Maybe they'll, crown Malcolm Brown, or they'll crown Akers or crown Hendo as the RB1 who will get majority of the snaps. Because I'm tired of seeing Malcolm Brown get 10 carries and then Hendo gets 6 and then Cam Akers with like 5 or 6. And it's just annoying. It's just something we need to know who is the guy. So week to week, we can have that confidence to put these guys in our lineup. So that's my only issue with Darrell Henderson. It's not even necessarily in the matchup. It's just don't get burned. Again, being that last week, he only put up 4 points. I know a lot of people on Twitter ranting saying, oh my God, he lost us our game. He lost us this week. But you got to understand there's just, auditions going on over there in LA. So stay away. Sit him. Next up, your boy, I'm not going to say my boy, Odell Beckham. He gets to sit him against the number 1 defense right now with the Colts, and Baker and Odell Beckham and Landry. You're all going to go back into depression mode in Cleveland. Now, it's going to be hot and cold with Odell Beckham. Like, he's a stud wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 1, blah, blah, blah. All the noise that you guys talk about, all the noise on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, mainstream, fantasy, whatever. He's a wide receiver 1. Cool. I don't ever have to play Julio Jones or Devontae Adams or D-Hop based on best matchups. No, they're elite, so they get the job done regardless. Baker is not an elite or even a top-tier quarterback, so he is not on a great team. Odell Beckham to be, just a full send every Sunday. Now, last week, that's what they were supposed to do. Dallas defense sucks. They were supposed to do that. If they didn't, they would even suck even worse. You know what I mean? Like the Browns, here's the thing about Browns players. The only player I don't have a problem with starting every single week is Kareem Hunt. That's it. It's a full send on him. Odell Beckham, Landry, they're wishy-washy. It's every other game. It's going to be like this in the entire season with Odell Beckham. It's not like I'm saying he sucks at football. He's on a sucky team. They're cancers. It's just The Browns suck. When have they ever been great? When haven't they been good? Like, yes, they're 3-1 right now. That's great. How long is that going to last? You know what I mean? Like, they were supposed to do that against Dallas's defense. So this week, going against the number one defense, you're telling me Odell Beckham's going to mirror what he just did last week or even come close to it? I will honestly be surprised if he puts up 15 points. That's 100% truthful, and that's even adding a touchdown to that. So if he puts up 15 points, I'll honestly be surprised by that. But being that Baker isn't even a top tier or an elite quarterback, and Odell Beckham's going against the number one defense right now, it's not looking too good. So I wouldn't want him in my flex position or even my wide receiver 2 position right now because he could possibly just cost me the game. 8 points with Odell Beckham, not getting it. We have to look at these elite names. Odell Beckham, what he used to be. But he has always been like this because he's never been on a great team yet. If he was on the Patriots, this will be another conversation. But yeah, full send. Belichick knows how to use him. Belichick has a quarterback that is capable to get the ball to Odell Beckham. Now you got Baker going to Odell. He doesn't want to force him the ball, but you're going against the number one defense. So you're going to have to do some forcing. And there's going to be a very tough struggle between, trying to get the ball to Landry, trying to get the ball to Odell Beckham or run the ball, pass the ball off to Kareem Hunt. It's going to be a lot of, frustration going on in Cleveland, being that the Colts' number one defense is no slouch. Like, there's nothing to be slouched with. They only given up 637 passing yards in 4 weeks, people. Like, are you even comprehending that right now? They are looking to trend to be at an elite level. And even the running game, they only allowed 308. So I'm a little, cautious about starting Hunt, but you got to start Kareem Hunt. You know what I mean? He has the RB1 role. He was once upon a time a first-round draft pick, and he was on an elite team with the Chiefs and et cetera. But I think Kareem Hunt is just very good at football, so I think he will get the job done between 10 to 15 points. And that's honestly what he's been averaging behind Nick Chubb. So I'll be happy with those points that I get from, Kareem Hunt. He was never in my RB1 role. He was never in my RB2 role. He was in my RB3 role flex. So it's kind of like it plays out very well for Kareem Hunt where his ceiling is high. But when it comes to Odell Beckham and company, I'm not a big fan of. So Odell Beckham this week gets the bench. Next up, I got to sit my boy David Montgomery. He has a very tough matchup. It's not helping his case, going into this week tonight against the Bucks that allowed the second fewest fantasy points to running backs, and it's not looking too good. The Bears are looking a little wishy-washy. Nick Foles took a beating against the number one defense, but I don't blame him, and I don't blame the Bears. At the number one defense, the Colts are just killing it right now on defense, so I didn't expect much. But Monty going into another tough matchup this week against the Bucks, it doesn't look too good for me. It doesn't look too good for a lot of the owners. I even question about starting David Montgomery tonight, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So hopefully he could pan out between 8 to 10 points where it could be some type of fantasy relevant. Because again, none of these guys are in the roles of your RB1 or RB2. They should be in your flex where you get able to swap in and out with different guys. So David Montgomery got to get the bench this week only because the Bucks are a very tough matchup. He's coming off a very beaten and wounded, defense last week against the Colts. So that's the only reason why I'm not starting Monty. It's not that his usage or him himself. It's just a very terrible matchup this week. Now, the best part of the episode, pump the brakes. The Ernest Johnson is the first pump the brakes, only being that he put up 95 yards last week, when Nick Chubb went out against Dallas. But again, we have to analyze the entire picture, people. Ernest put up 95 rushing yards, which is great. It's cool. It's impressive that he did that first, debut to be an RB2 in the backfield behind Hunt. But, yeah, he got the Colts this week. That's not going to be a good matchup for him, being that he doesn't have the experience. And the Colts defense, again, I've been saying this entire episode, they're the number one defense right now. They're very tough. They only allowed 308 rushing yards. So I don't see where I can put, Ernest into my Ernest or Johnson, whatever you want to call him, in my starting lineup immediately. A lot of people running the waiver wire, and then I know, again, it's hard with COVID and injuries. You guys are just throwing them in your starting lineup and hoping they mirror what they did last week. It's going to be very hard to do that when you have terrible matchups leading up. So here we have to look at it as like he could sit on my bench. Let's see what he does. Let's see if he can get momentum. Let's see if he, puts up some type of fantasy relevant points. I don't like to get guys fresh off the waiver and like they're the hot commodity of the week and they're talked about everywhere. Like, oh, go get him. Yeah, go get him. But that doesn't necessarily mean go start him immediately. So let's just pump the brakes, wait and see what happened, and see if the kid can get some momentum and keep this going out, week to week. So next up on Pump the Brakes, Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson. I want to put these two together, but I really just want to talk about Justin Jackson because I feel like a lot of people already had Kelly's stash on the bench, but this week's matchup against Saints, NOLA, it doesn't look too good. The Saints are ranked 6th fewest of allowing fantasy points to running backs, and I feel like this isn't a great matchup for you just to be hot off the waiver wire, getting Justin Jackson and throwing him into your lineup. We didn't see much of him. The Saints right now are only allowing 3.6 yards per carry. Not great, not terrible either. It's like in the middle, but they're still very good at stopping the run, and plus they're in the dome, so I feel like Justin Herbert's going to have to air the ball out a lot. But what gives me some type of hope with both these guys, Justin Jackson and Kelly, is that they have the pass catching ability. So that gives me some PPR hope, but I don't want to just go running off the waiver, getting Justin Jackson or even Kelly if he was still available and throwing him in my starting lineup. So again, I know you're dealing with injury. A lot of Austin Eckler owners are in pain right now. They've just been added to that, crazy madness of the injury bug going around. So I feel like you kind of are like obligated to throw one of the two into the starting lineup, but that's you rolling your dice on your team. You know your team better than I know your team. I don't have visual on your team. I don't have visual on your record. Maybe you're in desperate need. Maybe you're sitting at 3-1. Maybe you're undefeated. I don't know. But I feel like I would just pump the brakes on the two, especially against the Saints. Ugh. That was a nice one. I'm not even going to edit that out. But I feel like, again, this is your ultimate decision, but I feel like you're just rolling the dice, especially with a Justin Jackson sitting in your starting lineup, probably your RB2 or your flex going into this week. So I would pump the brakes. So that was today's episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next week for another great episode of Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ. Peace.